Director James Comy, he testified before the House Intelligence Committee. That was earlier today. Democrats, the alt-left, propaganda, destroy Trump media, continue to ignore facts in what has clearly now become a political witch hunt. And that is tonight's opening monologue. All right, so after 8 long months of pushing conspiracy theories, one after another, well, liberals still refuse to accept a simple truth. There's not one shred of evidence, none, showing collusion between President Trump and the Russians. None, zero zip. Now, instead, the only thing that they can focus on is the FBI director saying that he has not seen evidence to support President Trump's tweets about wiretapping. Now, here's the same hypocritical media that used the words wiretapping in their own reporting. Remember this headline from the New York Times, January 20th? Quote, wiretap data used in inquiry of Trump aides. Oh, the New York Times, are they going to apologize? Now, while the Democrats feign moral outrage, they are missing the real scandal here. Laws, in fact, were broken. Starting back in January, we have seen the repeated leaking of classified information meant to inflict damage on President Trump and his entire administration. Now, every one of these are criminal acts, felonies that are being committed. That does not seem to bother the Democrats in any way, shape, manner, or form. And the intelligence community, well, they don't seem to have an answer as to why it's happening and how they're going to stop it from continuing. Take a look at this back and forth between Congressman Trey Gowdy and the FBI Director Comy about these leaks. Watch this.
I thought it was against the law to disseminate classified information. Is it?
Oh, yes, sure. It's a serious crime.
Is there an exception in the law for current or former U.S. officials who request anonymity?
To release classified information?
Yes, sir.
No.
Comey admitted it is illegal to leak classified intelligence. So why hasn't he found the person or the people responsible? And why, after all these months, can't the FBI give us an answer? Now, Trey Gowdy also asked specifically if there was an investigation into General Flynn's case. That was a felony for sure. Watch this.
We're a month and a half or 2 months into something that you and I agree is incredibly important and also happens to be a felony. So I'm just simply asking you to assure the American people, you've already assured them you take it really seriously. Can you assure them that it is going to be investigated?
I can't, but I hope people watching know how seriously we take leaks of classified information, but I don't want to confirm it by saying that we're investigating it. And I'm sorry I have to draw that line. I just think that's the right way to be.
Oh, the right way to be? The FBI doesn't comment on potential ongoing investigations? Well, the problem is today, Comey, well, he commented on an ongoing investigation into potential Russian influence in the election. Now, the FBI director cannot have it both ways here. Now, right now, there are so many questions, no definitive answers, and it has allowed the alt-radical destroy Trump media to run wild with paranoid conspiracies. The only crime we know for a fact that was committed, the only one, was the leaking of Lieutenant General Michael Flynn's name to the media. House Intel Committee Chair Devin Nunes, he said this exact thing earlier today. Take a look.
Do we believe there was any specific, well, do we know of anybody else other than Mike Flynn who was swept up in this?
Well, you're right to point that out, because the one crime we know that's been committed is that one. The leaking of someone's name through the FISA system. That is a crime that's been committed.
Felony up to 5 years in jail, maybe longer. Now, Senator Rand Paul's also speaking out about the law being broken in the case of Lieutenant General Flynn. Here's what he said.
I think that we know one thing for sure, that the Obama administration did spy on Flynn. Now, whether it was direct or indirect, somebody was reading and taking a transcript of his phone calls, and then they released it. It is very, very important that whoever released that go to jail, because you cannot have members of the intelligence community listening to the most private and highly classified information and then releasing that to the New York Times.
Now, aside from the political stunts and the feigned moral outrage and selective moral outrage from the Democrats at today's hearing, what else did we learn? Well, pretty much what Circa News reporters Sarah Carter and John Solomon have been telling us for the past 2 weeks right here on this show. That's right, that national security and intelligence agencies have, in fact, been investigating Russian attempts to influence the election. This is not new. We've been talking about it for 2 straight weeks. As Obama's own director of national intelligence, James Clapper, said, Russian meddling didn't have an impact on vote tallies. Watch this.
First, we cannot say they did not change any vote tallies or anything of that sort.
Yeah, I'm just talking.
We have no way of gauging the impact that certainly the intelligence community can't gauge the impact it had on choices the electorate made.
No impact on vote tallies. Also today, the FBI director and Admiral Rogers testifying both said that Russia did not influence the vote tallies in key swing states: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, North Carolina, Florida. This is them today.
Do you have any evidence that Russia's cyber actors changed vote tallies in the state of Michigan?
No, I do not, but I would highlight we're a foreign intelligence organization, not a domestic intelligence organization. So it would be fair to say we are probably not the best organization to provide a more complete answer.
How about the state of Pennsylvania?
No, sir.
The state of Wisconsin?
No, sir.
State of Florida?
No, sir.
The state of North Carolina?
No, sir.
The state of Ohio?
No, sir.
So you have no intelligence that suggests or evidence that suggests any votes were changed?
I have nothing generated by the National Security Agency, sir.
Director Comey, do you have any evidence at the FBI that any votes were changed in the states that I mentioned to Admiral Rogers?
No.
No, none. Comey also noted that, in fact, it's happened before, and Russia will try to interfere in the 2020 election. And by the way, if you read the tea leaves here, the investigation seems to now be focused on specific individuals. And let me emphasize, not President Trump. Now, of course, the Democrats, they didn't mention that today. Instead, they're pushing the false Russian narrative lie. Watch this.
Most important, we do not yet know whether the Russians had the help of U.S. citizens, including people associated with the Trump campaign. Many of the Trump's campaign personnel, including the president himself, have ties to Russia and Russian interests.
This committee, of course, is engaged in an investigation about links, as you said, between the Trump campaign and the Russians, should there be any possible collusion.
Can you say with any specificity what kind of coordination or contacts you're looking at in your investigation generally?
All right. So if influencing elections of foreign countries is so awful, so horrible, where were all of these Democrats back when President Obama was trying to influence the Israeli elections? Now, let me remind every one of you hypocrites in Congress and all you liberal snowflakes out there that, in fact, a congressional investigation found that back in 2014, an Israeli political group used 300,000+ taxpayer dollars from the Obama State Department in a grant to create a political apparatus to try and defeat our closest ally in the Middle East, the Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu. What a bunch of hypocrites. Here with reaction, Circa News investigative reporter Sarah Carter. All right. The first thing I got out of this, I said, you go, Sarah, you go, John, because everything you've been telling our audience for 2 weeks was validated today. Let's start there.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, we talked about the fact that the FBI had conducted a traditional investigation into Trump's server that was located outside of Trump Tower, and that they found no evidence of criminality at all in the server, the pings that were reported between his server and the Russian bank. We also talked about the FISA and that there was an overall investigation into Russian hacking. This proved out to be true. And I want to bring up something that you just talked about, Sean, that's so important. There's also no evidence, according to our sources, of any collusion between Trump or his team and Russia and the Russian hacking. So we've seen that from Senator Grassley. We've seen it from Chairman Nunes. We've heard it from Clapper. We've heard it from numerous other sources, people who support Hillary Clinton, like former acting CIA acting director Mike Morrell, who all have said there is no evidence to date to support that. But that was one of the things that was not answered at the hearing.
You know, and the Destroy Trump media is very interesting how they spun this thing today. The FBI wouldn't confirm that the tweet of Donald Trump about wiretapping by the Obama administration. Interesting. Wiretapping and surveillance technically are two different things, but I would argue we may be parsing words. Nobody asked if the Trump server at any point was surveilled. The Trump Tower server was surveilled at any point by any law enforcement, and whether or not James Comey knew it. Wouldn't that be the better question to have asked?
Yeah, I think that would have been the better question to have asked. And it goes way beyond that. Okay, physical wiretapping of Trump Tower. Okay, that's what they've said. That's the evidence. Even Nunes came out and said, okay, there is no evidence of physical wiretapping at Trump Tower. But remember, Chairman Nunes' conversation with the Russian ambassador and that leaked. Was that the only name? Are there more names out there? How many people saw unredacted transcripts of phone conversations between Trump and his associates and foreign leaders? Because remember what the FISA covers, Sean.
Right.
It covers the foreign leaders. So anytime President Trump, back then candidate Trump, made a phone call to a foreign leader or spoke to them, was that viewed by others? I mean, that's something that Chairman Nunes and others want to know.
You know what's sad is that the director of the FBI, who doesn't comment on ongoing investigations, well, he commented on an investigation that you've been reporting on for 2 weeks. That, in fact, there were 2 warrants issued. One was FISA, one was non-FISA. And it was not against Trump, but it was into the Russian influencing or attempt to influence of the election. It has nothing to do with Donald Trump. In an ancillary area, when it did, they looked into the Trump server. They found nothing. He didn't say that today. Why? And how important is that for the public to know?
Well, he's very limited on what he can say because the DOJ gives him those parameters, right? The Department of Justice says these are the parameters in which you can disclose this information. And maybe because the report isn't closed yet, the investigation is still ongoing, he didn't answer those questions. What we do know, and I've contacted the DOJ, I asked them, is there an investigation into the leak? Have you given permission for the FBI to investigate that leak? They would not answer me either way. But we do know from the sources we've been speaking to.
Why are they selective in what investigations they're willing to comment on when they don't comment on investigations?
Exactly. I mean, that's a very good point, and they won't answer that. But what we do know is, according to our sources at the FBI and on the Hill, they have not been given that permission yet.
Last question. The real story is seeming to move in a political direction. Where are we in terms of that?
Well, we are continuing to investigate that. I mean, I think the biggest question here is, was intelligence politicized? How was it politicized? And when we're looking at the FISA, what are our rights?
Is it possible top intelligence people, Trey Gowdy went through the list of people that would have had access to this information, especially after Executive Order 12333 was expanded to 16 other agencies, naming specific names. Now, Trey Gowdy's never lost a case as a prosecutor. I assume he was setting the table for future investigations and questions that would directly relate to who knew what when.
Yeah.
Of the names that he listed, true or false?
He mentioned, true. I mean, he mentioned Susan Rice. He mentioned Ben Rhodes. He mentioned Director Brennan. I mean, there is a list of people.
And there could be a top intelligence leak, and that is the issue, and that's the felony we know that was committed. Right?
That's correct. That is correct. But whether it's investigated, we just don't know if it's going to go that far.
All right. Great work, Sarah. We'll continue. We've been way ahead of the curve. We've been telling people for 2 weeks. They're not listening yet. Thanks for being with us. And up next, this is a Fox News alert. Air Force One has just arrived at Joint Base Andrews. President Trump is traveling back from his rally in Kentucky. Joining us now with more, Counselor to the President, Kellyanne Conway. I want to stay on this issue and how wrong the media has it in so many different ways. We've been reporting everything with John Solomon and Sarah Carter for 2 weeks. You heard my opening monologue. What is your reaction to it?
I thought today showed the best contrast of all, Sean. You have an 8-month-long investigation on Russia with nothing to show for it, and Donald Trump in office for just 2 months with so much to show for it. He just had his rally in Louisville, Kentucky, promising to make good on uprooting and repealing and replacing the most intrusive, invasive, expensive, and expansive law entitlement that we've had in generations. And he's making good on that promise just this week by negotiating, by listening, by improving and making progress on the bill with leaders in the House and the Senate, and of course our governors who control the Medicaid dollars. And so I think the contrast is really remarkable. I love the way President Trump defied all the negative noise inside the Beltway by going to Kentucky and putting a very positive, optimistic message out there for all to see. The positive, optimistic message that he delivered in Louisville tonight really matches the markets, the stock market, the consumer confidence, a 12-year high in confidence among home builders, according to a report last week. And so he matches a lot of the mood of this country that's not being reflected, that's not being covered, because it's negative, negative, negative. But look, I mean, the unmasking of an American citizen through these intelligence leaks should concern everyone. I think we learned about that today. And, you know, again, I would just repeat, we've had 8 months, and I'm not sure that we've advanced the ball at all.
I know he had a really good meeting, and he was able to win over through some of the changes he negotiated with the Republican Study Committee. I spoke earlier tonight to some of the members of the Freedom Caucus. They're not there yet. They would have enough votes to stop it in the House. Senator Paul, a few other senators on their side, they want more changes. The president wants a vote by Thursday, or Paul Ryan, who we'll talk to in a minute, wants a vote by Thursday. You convinced that'll get done?
Yes, the president and vice president have really leaned in on this, and they're confident that we'll get the votes. And as you just intimated, some changes have been made to the legislation. That's
Even
what
tonight,
leaders do. That's right. They listen, they negotiate, they find out what's in the best interest of everyone and what's possible. And some things can change, some things can't, frankly. But you know, the president made a really good point tonight in his rally in Louisville, Sean. He talked about this Thursday getting the health care repeal and replacement done, getting that vote in the House. And then he said we're going to move on to taxes soon, and then we're going to tackle drug pricing. And the president's own words tonight were, some people say getting the cost of drugs down and medicines is just as important as tackling health care altogether, because this is really something we hear from people all over the country. It's just damaging the everyday affordability of life, and it's why people found that the original Affordable Care Act was neither affordable nor sustainable.
The two solutions that make the most sense to me are, number one, medical savings accounts, which I've advocated for years, and the second, I keep putting this guy from Wichita, Kansas on radio and TV. His name is Dr. Josh Unger, Atlas MD, $50 a month per adult, unlimited care, concierge care, $10 a month for a child. He negotiates directly with the pharmaceuticals, 95% discount. Literally a 98% discount for x-rays, MRIs, every procedure, broken leg, stitches, all taken care of. Add a catastrophic plan, semi-high deductible, and you're fully covered. God forbid you get cancer, heart attack, or a bad accident. It's so simple in so many ways. Is that all going to be in this bill by Thursday? That's what I want to know.
The president, as a non-politician who appreciates free market solutions, private solutions, listens to accounts like that. And that's the whole point here, is that when you have top-down government-run health care that people are forced to purchase on or pay a penalty, a tax essentially, you don't even listen to examples like the one you just related and relate regularly to your audience. There are so many great best practices out there in the free market, and this president is somebody who's listening to that and putting it in there. But we feel confident. I was up on Capitol Hill tonight with our Director of Legislative Affairs, Mark Short. We met with members of the Republican Conference. Folks are on Capitol Hill constantly. People are over to the White House, as you know. They're working the phone. So this is a very collaborative process, and it's one that I think you really see the leadership of the president and the vice president, where they did not delegate or abdicate the details to anyone else. They've been fully involved, and along with Speaker Ryan and of course Leader McConnell and the leadership in both chambers.
I got to tell you, and Dr. Umber, in his case, he was able to duplicate this in 1,000 other practices around the country, and there's so many new paradigms that'll emerge. It'll be fascinating to see that change for the better for people that now can afford health care and have a better plan, and competition will do that. Kellyanne, we love having you. Good to see you. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Sean.
Bye.
All the best.
Paul Ryan is with us. Mr. Speaker, always good to have you. Thank you.
Thanks for having me, Sean. Thanks for having me, Sean. Good to be with you.
So you want to vote. We expect to vote Thursday on the health care bill, and I saw a lot of progress on Friday. Let's start with the good news. And for example, the White House, the option to impose work requirements on Medicaid recipients, block grant Medicaid. I know that was important to the Freedom Caucus members. And also the measure, which I think is interesting, is that the White House and House leaders are also increasing the tax credits. Some people don't like that aspect of it. Where do you stand now? Do you think you have the votes right now to pass this bill?
Yeah, I feel very good, because what we've been doing this entire process, Sean, has been listening to our members, finding out where the consensus is, and making improvements to the bill as we've gone through the legislative process. As you know, it's a 4-committee process. In the Budget Committee, there was an effort to say, let's look at work requirements. Let's look at even more federalism for Medicaid, something very important to conservatives. There already is a per capita block grant, but some governors were saying, let me just take the whole thing in a block grant. And that's what a lot of conservatives were asking for as well. And that's something we figured out we could get this bill to do. We always had to make sure that every change we make conforms to the Senate rules, which we have to play by to make sure that it can't get filibustered. And so that's what we've been doing. So all these changes that have been added, we're doing to make sure they're done in such a way that it can't get filibustered. And we feel really good where we are. So a lot of members have brought a lot of good ideas to the table. And you mentioned the last one. That's something that's also important to the president. The president has said, let's see if we can add to the people who are getting assistance, who don't get health care from their job, who are older, maybe in their 50s or their 60s, to make sure that they're in a good place as well. So we're doing even more assistance there, more federalism, work requirements for Medicaid, for able-bodied people. So these are the kinds of things that get Republicans in a good place. We feel very good. Our members have been working really hard at this, and we realize that this is coming to the point. The president's going to do something in Kentucky tonight. He's coming to talk to us tomorrow morning to give sort of a rally to our members to get this done, because you know what? We all promised this. We all said we would repeal and replace Obamacare if you give us a Republican president, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate. Well, we have that now, and we're working very closely with the administration. I got to tell you, Sean, I'm really, really impressed with this, with the president himself, rolling up his sleeves, getting involved, listening to members, brokering compromises, getting us on the same page, and getting to this place. So I feel very good at where we are, and we're going to move this to the House and then go take it on over in the Senate.
Why is so much emphasis put on the CBO? They said Obamacare would have 24 million enrolled people. Right. They have 11. I mean, it almost seems like an effort in futility to keep going back to them when they're so wrong so often.
It's all about the filibuster, Sean. It's all about the way that the Senate law works with the Budget Act, which says the score, as scored by the CBO, must meet what we call reconciliation instructions. And so to conform with the Senate rules, to be able to reconcile this bill and block a Chuck Schumer filibuster, you got to have a CBO score. That's how it works, and those are the rules we're playing by. Those are the rules that they are.
All right, let me then move on. You saw the hearings today with James Comey. To me, the big news that came out of this is both Comy and Admiral Rogers both confirmed what James Clapper had said, and that is, okay, there's no evidence that any votes were altered or shifted or changed in any of the swing states that mattered in this election. The media is not focused on that. But we had reporters on this program, John Solomon and Sarah Carter. They're both saying, in fact, there was surveillance of the server at Trump Tower. There was a FISA warrant about the overall Russian investigation, not about Trump. And while he's willing to admit one investigation is going on, he's not willing to admit another in terms of leaking. He says, well, it's common practice. We don't acknowledge that. Is that troubling to you?
Well, look, that's why we have an Intelligence Committee investigation. So the point is, the president asked for this, and we already had an Intelligence Committee investigation going on before all of this. And so that's why I think Chairman Nunes and his ranking member and Chairman Burr over in the Senate and his ranking member are going to see to the bottom of this and get through everything all Russia-related. I didn't watch the hearing because I've been actually busy doing my job, but I've had briefings from Comey. I don't think we learned anything new here, and it only confirmed what we've been saying all along. But at the end of the day, we'll get to the bottom of all of this stuff, the questions you just raised, with the Intelligence Committee investigation that's ongoing.
Last question, back to health care. Is the Freedom Caucus on board? Well, have you talked to them? Because Dave Bratt earlier today said 40 members were not going to vote for the bill, and Rand Paul said the same.
Yeah, well, I've spoken with many of them. I haven't spoken to every one of them. I talked to a lot of members. We got 230-some members here. But the Freedom Caucus members that have had this vote in committee have already voted for it. One of the ones that didn't vote for it in the Budget Committee has now come out in favor of it since then. So we've had Freedom Caucus members already voting for it in committee, and one of them who didn't is now in favor of it because of the work requirements, because of the additional layers of federalism. So I've spoken with a lot of Freedom Caucus members who are voting for it. We also have the largest conservative caucus here, the Republican Study Committee. That's the biggest conservative caucus we have in Congress. Their leader and their key members came out in favor of it with President Trump in the Oval Office on Friday. And so we're making tremendous progress. We feel very good. And it's because we've been negotiating, listening to one another, improving this bill, making refinements to it so that we get to the sweet spot of a consensus bill that can pass. The key, it doesn't make any difference if you can't repeal and replace it if you can't pass it. So we're getting a bill that can pass, that repeals and replaces Obamacare. Okay. And this is just one piece of the three things we're going to do.
And you are confident that the bill in the Senate will be similar?
Yeah, the bill in the Senate will be similar, but we want them to improve it if they can. We think, because their rules are a little different once it gets over there. So if senators can make improvements to this bill without jeopardizing what we call the Byrd rule, meaning a filibuster, that's great. We want them to improve this bill if they can.
All right, Mr. Speaker, I know you're busy. Thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Sean.
And up next, live tonight.